Facebook completely dropped the video there. I don't know if this is going to work again. So I'm going to see if I can pick up my train of thoughts and jump in again here. Okay, so this is part two. I will post a link to part one for anybody who's watching the replay. I'm so sorry. It might be because I have like 48 tabs open and 5 applications. So I closed down a lot of it and I'm restarting my video, and I hope this works better. But I will talk faster and wrap up my points because Facebook thinks I'm talking too much apparently. Okay, so we're talking about multiplication. If you're watching this as the replay, go back and watch the first one. It'll make a lot more sense what I'm saying here. Okay, so we're talking about the benefits. So on the positive side, the benefits of using a strategy, a conceptual based approach instead of just memorization forward. Okay, so students will draw connections so they see. I was talking about the doubles, but I'm gonna skip to this. Students will see connections. They'll be able to use something they already know and build off of it. So they're not, okay, this is the key point. They're not seeing math as all of these isolated fragments where everything is something in itself. That's the problem with a lot of these memorization tricks and stories, is everything is a little individual package. And that is so much to keep track of in your head. But if you see that it's just this, math is one continuous whole. Everything relates. And if you see it that way and approach it that way, students will be able to just dive in and swim around and be confident that they know where they're going. They're in this part, they know how to get to somewhere else. Rather than think of it just like dropping a pin blindly on GPS and then zooming in and seeing, where are we? What did I do? And probably never being able to recreate the experience because you don't have a sense of the broader picture of where you're at. So that's a negative and a positive, but the benefit is you build connections when you take a conceptual based approach to multiplication or math in general. And you see how it works. Okay, the next thing is a huge benefit to taking this kind of approach to math is the strategies you develop with a single digit facts will stretch to much larger numbers. So what you do with 7 times 9, let me show you. If we're doing 7 times 2, I'll keep it easy here. Okay, so we always start with white on right if you're using Reckon. So here's 2 groups of 7s. And you start with volume 1 so you can subitize and instantly see this is 7 because it's a 5 and a 2. So you want to get past counting. Everything we're doing is getting past counting and getting past memorization. We're going deep into what numbers actually are. Okay, so when you see it this way, this is kind of from the addition book, you see that there's 10. It's like a 10 frame, so you go back and forth between 10 frames and Recomex. And then there's 4, so you haven't had to count anything. So if you take this approach, starting from the very beginning, so you can see how it starts at a pre-K level, and then it can build up as far as you want to go with it. Because we'll take this approach where you break it into smaller parts, and then that is going to carry into, I have my multiplication models up here, and remember, all you have to do is ask, and I will send you this chart. This is included in the multiplication book, so if you're going to get the multiplication book, you'll get it. But if you just want to get this and see what it is, this is free because I don't want you to pay twice. I don't want you to buy it now and then buy the book later. So anybody who would like this is all of the multi-digit models at a glance in flipbook style. So it may not be the best first approach if you don't just hand it off to your kids if they've never seen it before. It's meant as a review after they've gone through it all. But anyways, you can do what you want with it once you have it. So that is free if anybody wants to request that. And I do it that way because it helps this video stay alive if you guys will interact with me. So it's good for me and for you if you request that for me. Okay, so if we use a conceptual based approach to build our numbers this way, not only do we know how to do our single digit facts, 2 times 7, for example, we can stretch that to multi-digits so that when you get into area models, so here's what we're doing with the Rec and Rec, and then we take that and draw it as an area model instead, but we go really slowly and gradually and draw it out so they see everything, you see it, and you can really get a visual grasp on how it's working. And then everything is subitizable, so we're not counting. You just see how the groups fit together. Okay, so that spreads, and then I have the whole wall chart progression that you get all the way up to the traditional US algorithm where you're stacking the numbers and doing like 500 steps in one tiny package. But the process breaks it down so you see why that works. Okay, so I said it works with doing this kind of approach with smaller numbers, stretches to larger numbers. It also stretches to smaller numbers because then you can take everything you know and work with decimals or work with negative numbers. And it definitely stretches all the way to algebra. I taught algebra before, and the factoring process with polynomials is exactly the same thing we're doing when we approach multiplication this way. So take the time, even though it's a little bit, it might be slower to take the time to think about math this way, but I really, as a former high school teacher, I really recommend that you slow down with your elementary school kids and take the time to see math, because everything you invest in this process is going to benefit them the farther they go in math. And like I said in the beginning of the first video, it just benefits them in general because it gives them more confidence. It helps them see the world mathematically and draw connections and understand how things work, that we're not just swallowing a lot of random information. And that's another thing. When you take a memorization based approach, it's kind of like you're just borrowing the information, and then eventually it kind of fades away unless you have a fantastic memory. But when you get your hands dirty and you really slow down and think about how does this work, then you own it. And then you don't, this is kind of maybe the one point I wanted to come to. You don't have to memorize this. 4 times 6 is 24 because you see it. Let me just show you this again. So 4 groups of 6, if you go through the whole process and see numbers this way, you can pause the video if you're doing the replay. What do you see here? Okay, you'll get to the point where you see 10, 20, and 4. So it's not that you have to memorize 4 times 6 is 24, but you get to the point where you see that, okay? And then if 4 6s is 24, 8 6s is double that because it's 2 4s. So if this is 24, 8 times 6 is 48. Okay, that's a really mini in a nutshell lesson, kind of as a sample of what the multiplication book is about. But there's a lot of ways to approach math. These books are really focusing on simplicity, so we're not going to go into every possible way to think about it, even though if you talk to me, I would love to have that conversation with you. But we want to give kids something to latch onto. So for every fact, there is a single strategy, and it's the tightest and cleanest that I could make it. But I highly recommend also. And also it kind of happens naturally. The more they start to see these connections, the more they make their own connections. Like, well, you could think of it that way, or you could see it this way, and that is fantastic. That is thinking mathematically. Okay, and then the final third or fourth benefit of taking a conceptual approach versus a procedural approach is just that it builds confidence. Students, when they the only tool they have is memorization, it really gives them a feeling of helplessness because they're at the mercy of their memorization, or they're at the mercy of somebody telling them if they're correct or not. But if you take this other approach and pave those roads, give them ownership of the land, then it gives them a lot more confidence. And it really can help parent-child relationships, as I'm sure you all know, and I know very well too. Okay, so that was a lot on the theory side. Just quickly, I've covered a lot of this, so I'll do this part quickly. What is the book actually like? So it's a little more than 200 pages, so not huge. Remember, it is a vertical approach, so it covers all of multiplication from single digits up through, it goes through triple times triple digit multiplication, but the skills you use could go to anything beyond that. So the first part really is a deep dive into single digits, getting those completely mastered. And there are checkpoints at every part so that you know you're mastering it before you move on. And also you kind of have to, because each one builds on the one before, the concept before it. We're not doing these isolated skills approach. Nature of it, I would say, is spiral, just because that's the nature of math. It continues. Every skill you build is built on something before. That's why it's really important not to have gaps and to build that solid foundation. Okay, and then so that's the first half of the book, and then we transition to multi-digits, and we so this works. You can transition to, you can kind of peel the layers off. You're just working with numbers, and then eventually you get to the point you're just working with the algorithm. So it's all there. It's all in the book. It's built on hands-on activities. Let me just, in case you haven't seen, I really am focusing also on just making this a pleasant experience. So it's not like a normal textbook. Well, maybe in some senses it is, but the lessons are super, like, I try to keep it to 1 to 3 sentences per page of an explanation, and then I'm really trusty on the fact that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I have lots of pictures in here, and then as they're going through it, almost every concept has a blank space in it, because I know that with my own kids, as we're working through something, if it's just a wall of text, they'll zone out. But if it's a wall of text with a blank, it's a little bit better. And then if it's kind of guides them through it, it's even better. So trying to do the most engagement, the most hands-on for kids, and again, the most hands-off for parents. Okay, so that is all of my notes. I lost track of the thread on the first one. I'll go back to that for anybody who had a question. Again, if you want the all-in-one flip chart, this is just free for the asking. If you would like the these can be used without the book. They work as an add-on to the book, but if you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about with the strategies, you could just use them as a standalone. This is just a $1 deal in my TPT store, so I'll leave the link for that. $1 deal for the week, since I'm doing this live video here. And I guess one more point along with that. My entire book series, I talked about how it can be a standalone resource, but it also is as expandable as you want. I have a whole series of add-ons. So on frameworkmath.com, there's a whole section dedicated to add-ons, and it will be growing. I'm really focusing on the workbooks, but I have a big library of resources already, and I'll be adding to that once this stage is complete. So we'll have videos. It has a lot of interactive activities online, a lot of printable interactive activities, quizzes, anything you request. I've gotten a lot of great ideas from people who are asking for something kind of more geared towards students with dyslexia or vision issues, or different things. So I want to help you guys help your students feel confident about math and really understand it. So let me know what you need, and I'm so happy to adapt my resources or create something. And I'd love to have you join us in the Framework Math Facebook group if you want to continue this conversation. Okay, I'm going to check if there's comments, and I don't know if I can do this while I'm on the same page. So if you want to wait one moment here, or if you're watching the replay, you can fast forward to this part. If I check on my phone, I can see it. Sorry, this is not as clear as I would have liked. Okay. And I don't see any questions. Okay, so if you have any questions, leave them. I'll be coming back to this, and let me know if I can do anything to help you. Thank you for watching my 2-part video here tonight. All right, good night.